Before I set out here, how many of you have read the newspaper today? Can we have a please big round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you.
Lalit, let me ask you, was it timed for the event?
It was, right? I mean, we told Accenture, just wait. I mean, the event is scheduled on Friday, so how about the news coming out on Friday?
Lalit, I hope it's not a sarcasm.
No, I mean it, Sameer.
Well,
I had to do something for you.
No, first of all, I think it's awesome, fantastic, and I think absolutely a game-changing moment for the GCCs. For the ones, let me first start with an anecdote. In fact, Lalit and me decided that please discard the script, let's go extempore today. 17 years back, that was the first time I met Lalit. That was at Leela itself. And Lalit and me were discussing about some of this whole shared service captive, and that was the time Lalit, it wasn't a word around GIC or GCC. And Lalit at that point of time told me something which no one at that point of time had ever anticipated, this whole piece around value, transformation, innovation, India becoming a nerve center for the enterprises, that whole aspect of really that innovative, transformative work happening from India, because it looked so distinct at that point of time. We were just focused on that whole aspect of cost arbitrage, this whole piece around how does this whole piece of transitioning happening cut to a stage today. And I was thinking yesterday when we were discussing and then this news came in. I think what's happening today is for real, Lalit. Let me start with this. This whole aspect about the news. What's the context behind it? If you can just, because I'm sure there's a lot of effort, a lot of, I would say, work which has gone behind this. But for the audience, since I'm sure after the news, this is your first interaction anywhere else, and we would like to take some brownie points in terms of that as well as part of our promotions. What's the context behind, Lalit, about this entire?
I like to say what just happened, right? So first of all, I'm very humbled and gratified at where we've landed. This has been in the making for some time now. We've been thinking about what's our next frontier, right? We wanted to see an effort that could bring the two ends of the spectrum together, the two sides of the coin when it comes to global talent, outsourcing, insourcing together. We've seen the pendulum swing from one side outsourcing to the other side insourcing, and we've been seeing some element of stability. We realized that ultimately it's going to be both sourcing, if there was a word like that. And I think that's where we have landed. This is, we feel it's going to be game-changing for the broader GCC industry. This is coming together of Accenture and ANSR to, do GCCs in a way that hasn't been conceived or done before. So non-linear build-outs, accelerated build-outs. As we all know, when you're building a GCC, it's very linear, very organic, one at a time. It takes forever to build capability. So this brings in the best of, all worlds for the benefit of the customer. So ultimately, the customer wins, and that was the proposition. The philosophy behind this, coming together is essentially the notion of a connected enterprise, right? We've extended the whole global talent life cycle to include, the broader ecosystem that is obviously the GCCs of the companies and their ecosystem partners, which includes companies like Accenture. So, it means a lot for us. The Accenture CEO gets into our board, so that's the level of, commitment that we have from Accenture. We have a go-to-market that's about to be rolled out, and I can tell you, it's going to be obviously, redefining, reimagining the GCC industry. So a lot more to come, but glad to be sharing this news at your event, Samir.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So in that same context, Lalit, and last couple of years, particularly from ANSR perspective, there has been acceleration of GCCs. And different models, different frameworks have emerged. And I call it what used to be before COVID, what happened before, I would say in COVID and after COVID. There's a spate of difference how the new code of GCC is being written now. Now, from an ANSR perspective, where do you see this with this announcement? And if I'm not mistaken, correct my number, it's now 126 in terms of the GCC?
127.
127? Is that 127 to be named or it's?
It's to be named.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
Next week. We're doing 5 this month, so that'll
Okay.
take us to 132
Awesome.
by the time August ends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does this whole aspect of what the growth strategy of ANSR is positioned today gets more symbiotic, synergistic, and more, I would say, in a different horizon with Accenture coming into the picture?
Right. So, we've sort of endeavored to continuously simplify the model. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fluff and a lot of rapperization to a concept that is very simple. I mean, all you're trying to do is help a company set up another location where they can find talent. Essentially, it's contextually empowered employees that are contributing to driving business outcomes for the company. So as we look at the next frontier in terms of what's ahead, we believe that the work ahead is going to be more in terms of operating model simplification. It's going to be around how global locations integrate and work cohesively with the home office. So a lot of work is not going to be around seat on the table and value or profit versus cost center. It is going to be a lot around simplification, getting the whole concept a lot more intuitive, a lot more integrated with the enterprise. And essentially, the innovations that are underway are more around the operating model. The concept of operating model becomes very important because you're talking of a number of GCCs that are taking on the mantle of reimagining, redefining enterprises from the perspective of either modernization of technology stack or embracing some of the emerging paradigms like AI is a great example in terms of what's ahead for the enterprises. So if GCCs have to play a meaningful role going forward, I guess what's going to be important is how the operating model is going to work, which essentially means how will GCC ultimately integrate. I mean, we are predicting and working hard for it to demise the notion of a GCC. We believe it's very divisive. It makes the global team an outpost, some sort of a subservient organization. So essentially, with the next generation operating system, the GCC becomes the enterprise. It's another office with a mandate. They become a lot more purposeful to take on a function, take on a product, take on a region. So they'll become a lot more mission-oriented, and much of what we are trying to do with our partnership with Accenture is to essentially take this concept broad and deep.
No, I think that's quite profound what you said, because that's something, if I think we really look at the construct of how GCCs stand today, is not being anticipated. Mm-hmm. Now, in the same context, Lalit, but just to demystify, now, in the sidelines when I was talking to some of the GCC leaders, I think one aspect which came in very clearly, when you're setting up a GCC, that first initial set of years is very, I would say, cautious, because that's also a testing bed for the GCCs to really prove that, look, we can do it. In your own, I would say, aggregated, set of GCCs, what you have set up, give us some practitioner's view that, look, you do these couple of things, a couple of dimensions in the first couple of years, and that's where then you start realizing that, look, things will fall in place. So is
Yeah.
there something in the first few years the leaders in the GCCs and the team, of course, associated need to be more aware about?
Yeah. You know, our first GCC way back in 2005 was Target, you know, and in some ways,
And
you
we
know, I
have a
keep telling
representation of
everyone-
Target as well. So,
You know, we've, you know, continued to do a lot of targets, you know, since we started our business, right? I mean, Target set a gold standard that's been, in many ways, hard to replicate. So I guess what was unique about Target, and that continues to be a story for majority of our GCCs, is the fact that there was unequivocal commitment, you know, from the leadership team. There was advocacy, there was sponsorship, there was acceptance, there was embracement, everything that has to go with adoption of the concept at the executive level, you know, is very, very critical. We rarely, you know, take on a GCC mandate if it is not well supported by the board, well, you know, endorsed by the CEO and the other C-level team, because it's going to go, not going to go very far if you're going to struggle to, you know, get the support of the broader organization. A lot of other things, you know, fall in place. A GCC brings in, you know, profound, you know, change to enterprises that can sometimes derail organizations. So you need the horsepower at the highest level of the organization. So if that commitment is not there, if you don't have that belief, you know, there will be ups and downs, but ultimately things will, you know, fall in place. So it's very, very critical that you have the right level of support. Some organizations come in with a fair bit of, you know, foresight, planning. They know what they're going to be doing over a period of time, and of course things, you know, eventually pan out, you know, as the GCC performs. And some experiment along the way, but I guess what is critical is the organizational support at the highest level and at all levels, right? I mean, I guess you just need that one, you know, factor to be working right for the GCC, and everything falls in place.
So in the same context, what you said, Lalit, this aspect about stakeholder management.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been also called out that one of the attributes GCCs really need to internalize is stakeholder management. But as a disclaimer, sometimes there is also a thinking that, look, are we going too way beyond in terms of managing, appeasing stakeholders versus really creating something which is intrinsic to the organization or enterprise? What's your thoughts around the stakeholder management?
So I think sometimes we end up over-engineering this whole notion of stakeholder management. I mean, think about joining a company and managing your partners. It's about building relationships, it's about building trust, it's about understanding organization. Work gets done in every organization through relationships and trust, by being, you know, part of the company. And I think in some ways that's no different for a GCC. You just got to be, you know, one of the many that, or one of the everyone that a company has in terms of employees. I mean, that's how it ideally should work, rather than, you know, taking an approach of appeasement or any form of over-engineering of what it takes to manage the stakeholder. And again, it goes back to the concept of operating model, org design.
Let me chime in and ask, because someone asked me if you can ask Lalit this question, that would be great. If one leadership attribute, Lalit, you have to pick in a potential GCC that's coming along your way, what is that one leadership attribute you will look in that potential leader to say, look, he or she is the right person for this?
I think it's influencing without authority.
Influencing
right?
without the authority.
So I guess the role that GCC leaders have to play is to influence the organization. And the leadership team obviously includes the site leader and one down from the site leader. There is a lot of change to be driven. There is obviously the influencing that relates to, you know, how work, you know, should move to the GCC. A lot of it is around influencing. So I guess in some ways it'll, you know, relate to becoming one of the archetypes. It's about embracing the culture. It's about building trust. It's about building the relationship. So you can effectively go out and influence without authority.
Gen AI, analytics, even I would say allied exponential technologies. Now, certainly there is also a shift from many of the enterprises to really call out how they can become tech-enabled, AI-enabled, or AI-first. Now, from a lens of GCCs, one of the aspect would be, look, talent is the key. There is also an aspect, what exponential technology work should happen from India, as in that GCC versus the parent organization. Now, in that whole conundrum, what's the best way for the GCC out here to really say, look, this is what we can pick up, deliver, and really make it to the next level?
Yeah, I think there are a few aspects of
And I'm asking from a tech perspective, as in this AI, analytics, or Gen AI perspective.
Yeah. Obviously, a GCC is set up with a purpose, and if the purpose is to help an organization expand into new technology frontiers, get into exponential technologies, obviously, such work will come to the GCC. I guess sometimes the challenges are when a GCC was essentially, designed to do something different, and there is obviously the GCC leadership team trying to bring in work that was not destined or planned to come to the GCC. So I guess the starting point is that initial alignment, whether work had to come. I guess where things won't work out is when you're trying to sell to the organization and try and bring work just because it's nice to be dabbling with cloud and InfoSec and Gen AI and everything that goes with emerging technologies. But assuming that a lot of GCCs are being set up in order to help an organization expand its internal capabilities in these areas, then obviously it's a question of putting the capabilities together, leadership, talent, the processes, the ability to identify the right use cases within the enterprise and ultimately drive business impact. There's only so much opportunity in traditional organizations to create sandbox environments and to do experimentation. End of the day, whatever work gets done out of the GCC, unless you are set up as an R&D organization, ultimately has to, benefit the business in some form or the other.
Let me ask you a rapid fire. 10 years down the line, 2035, what would be a set of GCC you would like to see?
I think the business is being run out of here. They are global leaders. We've seen now CIOs sitting here. So we have a GCC where the COO is about to be hired here. Maybe 3 years, 4 years less, a CEO sitting over here. And why not? We have a lot of companies that are entirely remote, and there's no reason why you cannot have somebody in this hall becoming the CEO and running an enterprise. It's imminent, right? It's round the corner. It's going to happen.
Trust me, Lalit, when you finish this conversation, a lot of people would like to meet you after this.
Sure, absolutely.
But I must say, personally knowing you, and we talk about ANSR a lot in our GCC-led conversations, not only it's heartening for, I would say, ANSR to get into this new, I would say, agreement, and with Accenture being the partner today. I think overall as a community, I think that's one of the stepping stone what one can see today, that this is where the next level of galvanizing power will happen, because somewhere when things are all going good, you need that nudge to see what is that inflection point to the top. And this is exactly what this piece of news and announcement has done. And also, I know that you are not a person who will ever rest on your laurels. So there are more milestones to come. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.